Hello, welcome to another 1830 and welcome to level 2. Exciting. That is not the only exciting thing that happened this week, because obviously after 7 weeks I learned how to sit in a chair. But in all seriousness, I hope you've been enjoying this weekend and some newfound freedom. I actually went to a restaurant last night and sat down to eat a meal that I didn't cook. Who knew that a couple of months ago that would be a novelty? And I don't know about for you, but I think with level 2 there comes mixed emotions. And I was speaking last week about learning to sit in the tension of two different things and learning to not have to put things in an either or category, but feel the tension of both and. And for me this week, I've been experiencing that in reality. As we move down these levels, I'm feeling an excitement about a new lease of life, a new sense of freedom, but also like a weird sadness and anxiety about going back to normal life. And I think that's okay. I think it's normal to almost be maybe kind of grieving some of the things that you've enjoyed about lockdown, whilst also wanting to just completely get out of your house and see people and change your environment at the same time. And tonight, Alex is coming to speak to us about what it looks like to be authentic, what it looks like to be real, and to actually just be honest with where we're at. So I hope this video this evening gives you just real permission to check in with yourself. How are you feeling during this time of level 2? And that it's totally okay if you feel like a complete mixture of emotions too. And before we hear from Alex, we're going to hear from a couple of our 1830 community about what they've learnt, what they've been grateful for, and what's been challenging for them this week.
Hi, I'm Deanna. I'm one of the volunteer youth leaders at St Paul's, and I'm also part of Unify, which is our small group for students. Something I found really challenging this week has been managing my expectations. My university course has moved online for the rest of the semester, so we get a mass upload of content at the start of each week and we have to work through it at our own pace. I've been scheduling out my week so that I don't fall behind, but what I've come to realise is that I don't always finish tasks in neat half-hour blocks. Inevitably, distractions, internet issues and afternoon slumps get in the way of my grand plan for optimum productivity. And I'm left disappointed, having not done what I expected of myself. And as much as I want to extend myself and reach those expectations, I've come to realise that maybe it's my expectations that I need to pull back to meet me where I'm at.
Hey guys, my name's Michael. I've been going to St Paul's for about 4 years now. One thing that I'm really grateful for this week is for people. So for my family, for friends, for colleagues, for community. I've been grateful for that ability to connect, to empathise, to encourage and be encouraged, whether that be in person or through technology. So it's really great to be able to connect with you guys this evening as well.
Kia ora, my name's Josh. I've been coming to St Paul's since about 2003, when I was about 2 and a bit years old. Over lockdown, I learnt a bit more about saving since I was fortunate enough to qualify for the wage subsidy, and I was actually unable to buy things like petrol and feed my addiction to gummy bears. So I actually saved quite a lot of money that I usually would have lost, and that's taught me a bit more about the importance of cutting all those unnecessary costs. And so coming out, I'm a lot better for it. I'm less addicted to sugar, and my skin looks great.
Luke chapter 8, verses 40 to 48. Jesus raises a dead girl and heals a sick woman. Now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace."
Kia ora, 1830, it's Alex. I've been on staff now for about a year and a half and coming to the 1830 for the last year and a half as well. But it's my privilege to kind of just share some of the things that I've been thinking about and reflecting on as we continue this Becoming series, becoming more like Jesus in character and in action. I've been really challenged in reflecting on this idea of what does it mean to become authentic to God? What does it mean to be our real authentic selves to God and as well as to each other, and how can that richen our lives? I don't know about you guys, but I've never spent quite so much time in my room as I have these last 7 weeks. You know, I basically work and I live in the same space, and so I keep it pretty tidy, but I wasn't always that way, and especially when I was a kid, I was known for having quite a messy room. And I remember whenever we had family visiting over, my mom and my parents would kind of go through this mad house cleaning frenzy, right? And one of my jobs was to make sure that I cleaned my room. And I was definitely one of those kids who kind of just shoved everything that I can under the bed until it's kind of bursting out of the sides and it seems like your bed is lifted just a couple centimeters higher because of how much clutter and mess is under there. But you know what's really interesting is that whenever we had our closest friends come over, my close friends come over, or even family that seemed to always be around, there was never this need to clean our room up. It was as if like the greater intimacy in those relationships could exist in the messy authenticity of our lives. And it's just really got me reflecting, what does that mean to sit in the messy authenticity of our lives together? And what I mean by mess, I don't think I mean like dirty or improper parts of you, or I think it's more of the things that we feel we need to hide from one another. And I think there's a bit of vulnerability in that as well. But it's just, I think the things that we feel that we just don't want to expose to people, even things that we don't want to expose to God, the ways that we feel we need to clean ourselves up in order to be with God and to be with people. You know, one of the things that I love about Jesus that I've been really thinking about is how he spent so much more time out in the streets with the people than he did in the temples or the synagogues. Have you ever noticed that? Like, he always seems to be out in the public with people. He spent way more time in the streets, in the dirty parts of society, even in the messy places of people's personal lives. But he never forced anybody to clean themselves up to come to him, actually. He does the opposite. He invites people to come and not clean themselves up. Like, come as they are. And I think that's really what authenticity is coming as you are. I think this is just one of the ways that God is calling us into his kingdom that is greater than the mess, but not in the absence of it. It's just this greater authenticity. And I think when we become people who become more authentic, maybe even become people who embrace our messy authenticity, then we experience a richer and deeper intimacy. You know, this way of being in public, out with all the people, wasn't always a popular opinion with the religious leaders of the time. Actually, the Pharisees did the exact opposite. They felt like they had to avoid the public. They had to stay ritually pure in order to do their ceremonial practices. And so by going out where the people were, they risked being touched by an impure person or by an impure thing, and then in turn becoming impure themselves for their practices. And so there was a lot of ritual impurities that were very visual to see on people and you knew about them, but there's also a lot of ritual impurities that were very known just to that individual, and so they kind of had to either distance themselves away or they could kind of just hide it. And really there's an honor system in it. If you knew you were ritually impure, you need to keep your distance from people. And the Pharisees thought it was easier, instead of trusting the honor system, to actually just avoid public places altogether. But Jesus seems to kind of do the opposite. Like, he knows the risk of becoming ritually impure and by being in these messy places of society and in people's lives, but he still goes there. Actually, I think he knows the risk and knows that he will in turn become impure himself, and I don't think that really mattered to him. I think Jesus never let impurity or messiness come at the expense of relationship. And I think it's because he never wanted people to feel like they have to clean themselves up to have a relationship with him. That he wanted them to be their authentic selves and not hide away who they were, to have a deep intimacy with Jesus. The story that was read in Luke is one of those stories of a woman who has this condition where she's consistently bleeding, which would make her ritually impure, which means she had to either spend these last 12 years hiding away from people and keeping her distance, or hiding her condition from people as well. And I love this story because she's so eager to get to Jesus. She's so eager to meet with him that she kind of squeezes and pushes her way through the crowd and touches his cloak, which would actually make him impure, but she was so desperate to experience the love and healing of Jesus, and that she does that. And I love Jesus' response. He says, "Who touched me?" He doesn't point at her, he doesn't point her out, he doesn't get angry, and he doesn't ostracize her at all. Instead, I think he gives her this invitation. He says, "Who touched me?" It's as if he's inviting her to become authentic with Jesus in that moment and to share her story with him. This thing that she felt like she had to hide doesn't have to be a shameful part of her that she needs to hide. It's actually a part of Jesus' story in her life. And I think sometimes the things that we feel like we need to hide under the bed are some of the most beautiful imperfections that God is calling us to share with him and with other people. I don't know about you, but these last 7 weeks, I never appreciated video chats more, but I feel like most of the people I've been chatting with and with the youth that I've been chatting with on our Zoom meetings as well, all agree that video is great and we're grateful for it, but it's not the same as being in the same room with the person and having that real presence with. But one of the things that I've been loving about the video chats is that because it seems like you kind of have to keep this constant dialogue, there's no just sitting and being with or playing games or eating food or watching a movie. It kind of forces you to keep talking. And so one of the things that I found in myself is that with some of the closest friendships and people in my life, keeping that constant dialogue, I found that I've started to feel a little bit more comfortable maybe taking some of those things, those parts of me that have been hiding under the bed, and kind of bringing them to the surface and feeling a little safer and more comfortable to sit in what I thought was messy parts of me, but really was just my authenticity. It was just the real me. And because of that, I think those relationships have actually become deeper and richer and more intimate. And the truth is, we actually don't need a quarantine to be that authentic with each other. We don't need to keep a constant dialogue to be that authentic with each other. Actually, it's one of the things that I'm challenging myself to leave with in this season is how can I be more authentic in the relationships with people in my lives during and even after this whole COVID-19 season. One of the things I really love about Luke's gospel is that he doesn't just record the events that happened, but he makes sure that he writes out the emotional responses that people had when they met with Jesus. Not just what happened when they saw Jesus, but the emotional responses. And we see that in this woman, like when Jesus calls to her and says to her, "Who touched me?" she comes trembling. That's a very emotional experience. And even the few verses beforehand about Jairus, he reaches to Jesus and falls at his feet, like he's having an emotional response and reaction to encountering the living God. And this is not on accident. This is quite intentional, that Luke wants us to know that it's important for us to see how people experience Jesus with their emotions. And actually, a scholar named David A. Neal writes to this, talking about this passage. The existential unity in what one feels, does, and believes is characterized of Luke's anthropology of salvation. The connection between human emotions and the experience of God's love and forgiveness is encouraged and celebrated in both the third gospel and Acts. Luke's narrative certainly shows us, as no other gospel, the real pathos, the emotional experience of those who come to Jesus. And I think what Luke wanted us to know is that people have these significant encounters with Jesus, also had these authentic emotional responses. And I think that was Luke's way of saying the room is full. You know, the way people felt and experienced Jesus, they didn't have to hide what they were feeling under the bed, but it was actually celebrated. It's almost as if what we might sometimes think is messy was celebrated in the authenticity and in the intimacy. So I have 2 challenges for you guys as we go on this week. And one of those challenges that I want for you guys is actually to read the stories in the scripture where people are real and authentic with God. And I think reading these stories, these raw stories about how people brought their full selves to God, actually encourages us how we can be our full authentic selves with God as well. You can read some of the other traditional ones as well, like Psalms or Lamentations. Even things like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane would be a great one to read. So read the scriptures where people were real and authentic with God. But the second challenge that I have for you guys is think of someone who you've been able to sit in those real, authentic places with. Somebody that's been okay being with you in a messy room. Somebody who's been okay with you not having to hide yourselves away from them to strip back those things, but also where you felt safe to do so. And I would say don't just thank that person. I would say share with that person how that authentic relationship has impacted your life, the difference that it made to you, because we don't always take the time to share how important people are in our life. And I think if you do that, it'll go a long way for them. So I wanted to kind of just close by reading a prayer over us. And this is a litany written by a woman named Fran Pratt. And so as I pray these words, you guys can either look at them in the screen, look over the words and pray them in your mind, or you can just maybe close your eyes and receive them however you feel comfortable with where you're at right now. But let me pray these words. God, we set out to grow in spiritual and emotional maturity, in relational health and community, in awareness and understanding, in good works and faith strength, but most of all, in love. Kindly teach us, O God, how to function as one body, how to de-separate ourselves from each other and you, how to walk humbly. And when we get into the nitty-gritty difficulties of the journey, when we're required to face our shadow selves, keep reminding us of your goodness. Keep turning your attention to divine love. May we become effective peacemakers, authentic relationship builders, merciful justice bringers, and steadfast evil resistors, always shining love's light, always doing love's good work. Amen.
Thank you so much for that, Alex. I find it really liberating to almost be given permission to just be completely as we are, to come as we are with no false pretense, to not have to look like we've got everything together, and to not be with each other like I guess we see on social media, to not kind of have the best filtered version of things, but just to actually show people like, actually this is who I am, not have to sweep and hide things under the bed. So thank you for that freeing invitation. And I want to offer you another invitation on behalf of St. Paul's. We have a pastoral care plan as part of our response to COVID-19. And so if you would like to access counselling at all, we have counselling sessions via Skype. And we also have career and redundancy coaching as well, and financial and budgeting support. And if you found that you've been affected by losing your job maybe, or your family struggling during this time, we have a financial fellowship fund. And so we can support with living and general day-to-day expenses as well. So if that is something that you would like to find out more about, please do email us at hello@stpauls.org.nz and we can give you some more information. And the same goes with if you'd like to support that fund. If you feel like, actually, I'm in a really good position and I'd like to give to the community of St. Paul's, then do email that same address and you can give into that fund as well. I just want to leave you with this picture. This is a picture of a sunrise the morning that we went into level 2. And I opened my curtains and saw that, and I was just like, wow. And it really reminded me of how every day we have a fresh opportunity to make different choices, to lean into what God is doing that day, to leave behind yesterday and actually just to be present in the present, I guess, and actually just to focus on not who we were or who we might be in the future, but on who we are becoming today. So I'll leave you with that, and I hope that if you get to see a sunrise this week, it might remind you of this series and what Jesus is teaching you. I hope you have a brilliant week, and we'll see you next Sunday.